Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Coleman, and I'm an attorney contracted with the Yes.Every Kid Foundation's Edupreneur Support Program, or ESP for short. And my goal is to assist educational entrepreneurs, or edupreneurs as we like to call them, in finding out what are the specific laws and regulations that are going to be applicable to their learning environment. And today we get to explore what those laws and regulations are for educational entrepreneurs in the state of Oregon. So, what you will learn today is first how to define the particular characteristics of your learning environment that will then inform you of what laws and regulations will be applicable to that learning environment. And then at the end, I will share with you helpful resources that will assist you on your edupreneur journey. So, let's jump right in. So, the most important thing that I advise every edupreneur is that they must define what their vision is of their learning environment, because it's not the way they classify their learning environment that determines the laws or regulations that are applicable to it. It's actually the unique characteristics of their learning environment that determines the laws or regulations that will be applicable to them. So, I would ask you to first start with asking yourself these questions. Who do you want to serve? Do you want to target private school students? Do you want to serve special needs students or only support homeschool families? And then you're going to want to define what grade levels you intend to serve as well. Next, you want to define how will you serve your families and your students? Do you want to provide in-person instruction, virtual services, private tutoring, or in-person homeschool support? And again, you can do a combination of virtual or in person, but you want to be clear as to how you intend to serve your customers. Then, when do you want to serve them? And this is very important because this usually informs whether or not childcare laws will be applicable to you. So, you want to define how often you plan to operate your learning environment. Will it be 4 days a week for 3 hours a day? Or maybe you only want to operate 2 days a week for 8 hours away, 8 hours a day. So again, that is very important because certain childcare laws may be applicable to you based on the amount of time you operate. And lastly, do you plan to meet the compulsory attendance laws in the state of Oregon? And in the next slide, we'll go into more detail. But this is the basic foundation of where you want to start defining the unique characteristics for your unconventional learning environment. And then you'll see as we go through this presentation how those characteristics will impact what laws then will be applicable to you. So, what are compulsory attendance laws? Every state has compulsory attendance laws that guide parents and guardians of children as to what ages the children must either attend a public school or an alternative education route that's mentioned in the compulsory attendance laws. So let's look at Oregon's compulsory attendance laws. So in Oregon, all children from ages 6 through 18 must attend a public school unless they fall under an exemption. And what are some of those exemptions? So a child is exempted from attending a public school if they are homeschooled, attend a private school, or if they receive private instruction from a teacher. So under these compulsory attendance laws, it can guide an educational entrepreneur as to what options they have in creating their learning environment if they want to assist parents in meeting these compulsory attendance laws. So let's look at the two options that you would have if you want to assist families with that. So you could create a private school in Oregon. The great thing about Oregon is that if you create a private school, you do not have to register with the Department of Education in that state because they do not oversee or regulate private schools. However, there are specific laws within the Oregon Code that private schools still have to follow, even though they're not being regulated by the Department of Education. And some of those laws may include the amount of instructional time that you have to ensure the children are receiving as being a private school. You have to obtain immunization and vaccine records. You have to also meet certain safety requirements, such as having fire drills so many times a year. You must screen your staff, and there's additional requirements you must meet. And I've included the link here within the presentation that will take you to the Department of Education's website and allow you to see all the different options in terms of in creating the private school of the laws you need to meet. So that link will take you here. if you click on private school frequently asked questions, it lists all the particular codes and also questions surrounding private schools in Oregon that you need to be aware of. So again, if you decide you want to assist parents in meeting the compulsory attendance laws, private school is one way to assist them in doing that. The other option is private instruction. This is where an edupreneur or educational entrepreneur can create a company that would allow parents to find a private tutor or teacher to come into their home and instruct their children. And this again allows them to meet the compulsory attendance laws. Now, the difference between providing private instruction versus a private school is the private instructor that is assigned to a particular student would be required to register with the local school district to let them know that they're providing this and that that student is meeting the compulsory attendance laws under this exemption. And also, that private instructor would have to provide state testing for certain grade levels. And I've included the Oregon code that goes over what those grade levels are and the type of testing that has to be administered. So again, in Oregon, if you want to meet the compulsory attendance laws on behalf of parents and assist them with that, you have the two options of private school and private instruction. Now, let's say you don't want to actually assist parents in meeting the compulsory attendance laws because maybe you want to have a more flexible program that wouldn't be limited in terms of instructional time or certain requirements and laws that we saw that are applicable to those two options. And you can create that. Typically, you would still have to meet your local building, fire codes, zoning codes, and food handling codes, which we will go over later in the presentation, which would also be applicable to private schools as well. But the key thing that we often find for either supplemental programs or programs that are not going to meet the compulsory attendance laws is that the child care laws can be applicable to their learning environment. And sometimes this is even applicable to private schools. So let's look at Oregon's child care laws specifically as it relates to creating a learning environment there. So Oregon, like most states, has not yet created an exception or exemption within the child care law for unconventional learning environments. So it's important for owners of learning environments to be aware of what could be applicable to them. So under the Oregon Administrative Code, it says a child is defined as any child under the age of 13. And what that basically means is that the child care laws will only regulate children under the age of 13 in the state of Oregon if a particular business meets the requirements that would then require the state to have a license to show that that business can operate in providing care and supervision for the child. And in Oregon's law, it basically defines childcare in a very broad way as providing care, guidance, and supervision for children or a child away from their parents and guardians. So as you can see, it's very broad and could allow for different types of learning environments to fall under the child care regulation laws. And the only exception that I saw to that was very clear in terms of educational businesses is that if a business is operated or if a school is operated by the local school district or government, then they would not need a license. So this again could even be applicable to private schools because those private schools would not be operated by the school district or government. And let's look at some other exemptions that may allow a educational entrepreneur to not have to obtain a license. So this would include if you are providing services for children who are of the age of 13 or older, then this would not be applicable to you. Also, if you target children and provide a single enrichment activity such as swimming, music lessons, or tutoring, this would not be applicable to you as long as the children are not attending your program for more than 8 hours each week. Also, a business that supervises 3 or less children, this would not be applicable to them. And lastly, a business that only supervises preschool children for less than 4 hours each day, they would not need a license. I also found that Oregon has a special license designation for a center that they deem as a child care center that is providing care for children between the ages or grade levels of kindergarten through 12th grade. It has a special provision related to those types of businesses, and I've included the link here, which provides the manual for school-age child care centers. So I would encourage you to reach out to the Oregon Department of Health and Human Services, which I've included the link here that you'll be able to access in the presentation, to find out whether your learning environment would either fall within one of those exemptions or if you would need to apply to obtain a license. So now we have been able to define the who part of your learning environment, meaning now you know what questions to ask in order to develop what are the unique characteristics of your learning environment, whether you're going to meet the compulsory attendance laws or not, and then based on those characteristics, whether or not the child care laws can be applicable to you. So now we will go into the what of your business, meaning what type of business entity or structure can you create that would best fit and meet the needs of your business. So you have the option of either creating a for-profit entity that you would register with the state for your learning environment or a nonprofit entity. Oftentimes, I'm sure you've heard, for-profit entities are usually LLCs or limited liability companies or C Corps or C corporations or S Corps. And I've included links to the Secretary of State for Oregon's site that gives more details as to the different for-profit options that you have in registering with the state, as well as what it takes to create a nonprofit. And then I've included the link also that will guide you through registering with the Secretary of State. So I want you to ask these questions in order to determine what's the right path for you, whether it is for-profit or nonprofit. First, you want to look at what is the purpose of your business? Do you just want to generate revenue, which is completely fine, and expand and grow potentially into different parts of Oregon, where again, you're just worried about producing income? Or do you have a mission or charitable cause that you would like to raise donations for to support and assist families in your area who may need additional services related to education, whether that is maybe raising money for scholarships to attend certain types of schools or providing maybe free school supplies? So that's the first question you want to ask is, what's your purpose? If it's to generate profit, then a for-profit structure is going to make the most sense for your learning environment. If your goal is a charitable cause or mission, then nonprofit may be the route that you need to go. You also want to consider the amount of control that you want to have within the organization. So if you want to run and own and make the decisions for your business as you see fit, a for-profit structure might be the best route for you to go. However, if you're okay with running a nonprofit where the board of directors would be making that decision or making the decisions for the nonprofit to ensure that they are meeting the mission and charitable cause of the nonprofit, then a nonprofit might make the most sense for your learning environment. You just want to remember that you cannot personally own a nonprofit. You can start it, you can launch it, but no one owns a nonprofit. A board of directors is the ones that moves the nonprofit in the direction to make sure it's continuing to meet the mission and the goal, but no one person actually owns and makes the final decision for the nonprofit. So control is a major, I would say, deciding factor in determining whether for you to go the for-profit or nonprofit route. Also, ability to solicit donations and preferred tax status. So if you want to solicit donations as well as not have to pay taxes on the donations that you are receiving, then a nonprofit is probably the best route for you to go for your learning environment. However, if you just are concerned about producing income and you do not mind that you can't raise donations, then for-profit is the route for you to go, because any type of for-profit entity that you create, you cannot accept tax-deductible donations. And your tax status would require you to pay taxes on some of the revenue that you are generating. And we'll get later in the program, I would definitely recommend working with an accountant, a bookkeeper, to kind of help you reduce that tax liability if you go the for-profit route. And lastly, if you decide the nonprofit again structure is the best for your learning environment, you need to consider whether you are going to register it just with your state, which you are allowed to do, But if you register your nonprofit with the state of Oregon, you are limited to only being able to accept donations from residents in your state and providing them with a tax write-off. You would not be able to accept donations nationwide if your entity is only registered as a nonprofit with the state of Oregon. However, if you go to the next route in terms of getting federal tax exemption status, after you register with the state of Oregon, then that would open the door for you to receive donations nationwide and be able to provide tax write-off or tax deductible donations to the people that are donating to your organization. And federal tax exemption status is the application process of going through the IRS and requesting for your nonprofit to be recognized and be federally tax exempt. And a common tax exemption status that you may have heard is getting a 501c3 for your nonprofit. Again, that is going through the IRS to put forth your application to request that. And if they find that you do meet the requirements and approve you, now you have opened the door to receive donations nationwide, and all of those donations would be tax deductible. And we will later look at the ESP or Edupreneur Support Programs platform where you can find additional information on, again, finding the right business structure for your business. And even if you want to consider running a nonprofit and for-profit, how you can do so and still be in compliance with state and federal laws. So now that we've covered the who, your unique characteristics of your learning environment, then the what as far as what type of entity structure you're going to create for your learning environment, now we need to answer the question as to where you can establish your learning environment. So this is where we're going to cover the fire, building codes, food handling, and zoning laws. So zoning is very important, and you must start here because in order to establish your business anywhere in the state, you have to ensure that it's in an area that's zoned for your particular business purpose. So you either want to contact your county or your city zoning department, and typically you would contact the city zoning department if a facility or place that you're looking at establishing your learning environment is within the city limits. And you can provide them with the address of the facility or building that you want to rent out. Or even if you want to establish in your home, you can provide them with your home address and see if you are in an area that is allowed to have some type of educational business. If that is the case, then you can move on to the next departments that we'll discuss. If not, then you may need to apply or submit some type of application to have the particular facility, your home, rezone for your particular business purpose. So this is why I say starting at zoning is very important, because let's just say you didn't start with zoning and you rented out a facility that met all your requirements for the type of learning environment you would want to have. But when you open your doors, the zoning department now comes to your door and tells you, I'm sorry, you have to shut this down because you are not in an area zoned for this particular business purpose. You would have wasted time, money, and energy and potentially hurt the reputation of your learning environment by having to close down soon after opening just because you were unaware that that area was not zoned for your business purpose. So we don't want that to happen. So I do stress the importance of contacting the appropriate zoning department to find out if you can operate there, and if not, find out the process of getting that rezoned. And what I would like to share with you is something that Options for Education has already put together. If you are in the city of Grant Pass, it gives you guidance as to how to contact the city of Grant Pass and utilize their website for even finding out if the area is zoned for that purpose. So if you go to optionsforeducation.com, you'll be brought to the resource library. If you type in zoning, the first search result is what you want to click into. Again, this is specifically for the city of Grant Pass. And this provides you with the website that you would go to find out about their zoning maps, their building codes, permits. And then there's additional information that's provided as to how to find out which zoning districts where your facility you want to place it at, which zoning districts are allowing your particular purpose or not allowing it. So this provides you an immediate answer as to whether you can even operate in that area. If you have any issues in even navigating the website, you can always contact the zoning department or go to them and they'll walk you through it. And it's my understanding that they are very open to working with new business owners and finding out, again, the places where are already zoned for their type of business purpose or the process for getting it rezoned. So the next place we will go is fire codes. So if the facility or your home is already zoned for your particular business purpose, now you want to make sure that that facility or your home is up to code in terms of the fire codes for, again, your particular business purpose. So the state of Oregon uses IFC or the International Fire Code as the model fire code for the state. Typically, these codes are applicable to educational facilities that have 6 or more people, that includes children, at any time in the facility that are gathered for educational purposes related to children or students in grades K through 12. Now, each county or city in Oregon can amend this fire code to meet their particular needs. So that's why it's important to actually reach out to either your local county or your city fire marshal or fire department to find out what would be the specific fire codes that are applicable to your learning environment. And I have provided a link here that provides you with additional information about Oregon's fire code. Next, building codes. As we saw in the city of Grant Pass, the building department is actually incorporated within their zoning department, which sometimes is the case for certain cities. But that doesn't mean that it's applicable to the whole state of Oregon. So if you want to find out your particular building code department, you would just need to type in your county or city and then follow the links that would take you there. But building is the next piece of the puzzle that you want to find out about. So Oregon has adopted parts of the IBC or International Building Code. And the IBC regulates educational businesses that have 6 or more people, including children, at any time that use a portion or all of a building or structure for educational purposes for grades K through 12. So this code regulates similar businesses in the same way that the International Fire Code regulates educational businesses as well. So again, it's important to reach out to your local county or city building department. And again, if you're within the city limits or your facility that you want to utilize is within the city limits, you would want to reach out to your city's building department. If you're outside the city limits, then you would contact the county's building department. And again, you can check to see if your building code department is within your zoning department, because that may be the case. But it's very important to find out what codes, again, would be applicable to your learning environment in the particular city or county you want to operate in, because if a facility is not already meeting those requirements, that may require you to invest a lot of money, and you have to look at, would it be worth it? Or would you like to find a building, facility, or home that is already meeting the building codes and the fire codes of your particular business purpose? Then that way you may not have to put as much money at the beginning to getting it up to code. So again, it's not to discourage you, but I want to make sure that you're answering these questions along the way of developing your learning environment so you can make the best decisions that are going to not only fit your vision, but help the families that you want to serve and potentially launch quicker, as opposed to having delays due to having to get in compliance with the fire and building codes of the area that you're in. Additional considerations, food handling. So typically, if a learning environment wants to prepare food that has to be refrigerated, they may need a either food handling permit or fruit permit in order to do so. Now, if your learning environment is going to allow the students to bring in their own lunch or food, or you're only providing prepackaged food that doesn't have to be refrigerated, such as individual chips that are sealed that you provide the students, or even maybe a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you may not need a food handling license or permit. And the best place to check in order to find out whether you need that or not is going to be your local county or city's public health department or health department. And I have provided the link here in which Oregon has listed the code as far as how they define food establishments. And usually any group that falls within a food establishment definition would need to get a food handling license unless there's a particular exemption for their business purpose. So again, you can start here to find out if you may fall into that category, but also confirm and verify with your local health department whether or not you need to get a food handling permit if you plan to serve and prepare food. And lastly, a business license. This is a question that we get often from educational entrepreneurs. So a business license is completely separate from you registering your particular for-profit or nonprofit business with the state. Each county or city in Oregon can choose whether or not to require a business that wants to operate in their county or city to have a license. And I do know, after talking to Brittany, who is the owner of Options for Education, the city of Grant Pass does require a business license, but it's a very simple form. I believe it's one page. And if you're a nonprofit, you still have to fill it out, but you would not be subject to the fees that for-profit entities would be subject to. So again, it's important to contact your either local county or city's business license department. If you Google your city business license department, it should come up. If you do not see it, it may be a person that's assigned within the city government or county government that handles the business licenses. So you can reach out to your local city or county government offices in order to obtain the information as to who's the direct person that you should speak to find out whether you need a business license to operate in that county or that city. And lastly, when can you operate? Well, if you're going to meet the compulsory attendance laws of Oregon, then more than likely you need to launch at the same time of your local school district because you have to provide the same instructional time that the local school district is required to provide. So in order to ensure you have enough time to operate in order to meet that requirement, it is best to usually launch around the same time as your local school district if you're going to open a private school. If you're going to meet the compulsory attendance laws through a private instruction tutor or teacher, where you have someone going into students' home, then you can pretty much just coordinate that with the individual family. And it wouldn't be subject to launching at the same time as a private school or public school. And if you are just going to provide supplemental support to parents, such as a tutoring center, a learning center, or you're going to provide enrichment activities, if you're not complying with the compulsory attendance laws, then it would not be necessary to then launch at the same time as the local school district. You can choose whatever time is going to work best for you as well as your audience that you're serving. Lastly, the how. So we've covered a lot. So you may be wondering, how do I even do all of this on my own? And the answer is you do not have to do this on your own. You do have a wealth of resources that can support you through this. So if you become a member of the Edupreneur Support Program, you can take advantage of the resources that we have on that page. So let's go to that now. And this link will be included in the PowerPoint presentation so you can access it. And it's yeslegal.org. This is the page you'll come to. If you're not already a member, this will look different. It will give you a registration button, which takes about 2 minutes. You just have to provide basic information, your email address, and then you'll receive confirmation that same day that now you have access to the Edupreneur Support Program. And this is a totally free resource. So once you sign in after you've established your account, and you go to the bottom of the page, you will find our business resources and state-specific resources. And if you click under the general business resources, again, you have a wealth of articles and videos on related topics in terms of launching or even being able to answer questions that you need to operate your learning environment after you've launched. So if we go under business resources and formation, you'll find information on how to form a business and some of what we talked about earlier, how to choose the right business structure for your particular learning environment. Also, if you go to business essentials, you'll find that we have some video clips on homeschool and how childcare licensing laws can affect homeschool businesses, how it can affect private schools. If you have issues with your landlord, or you need assistance in understanding how to read through a commercial lease, we have resources related to that. And some of the things that we've already talked about, it goes into more detail. You can find information about business licensing and registering, how to create a business bank account. Do you even need a business license? Or what is an EIN? And as I mentioned before, as we encourage people to explore getting assistance with an accountant, why you may even need an accountant. Again, all of this is free information that you will have access to by just joining the Edupreneur Support Program, and the link will be at the end of this presentation. And another resource that we've already spoke about is Options for Education. I'm going to go back to the original page. So here's the resource library where everything is categorized by the different resources that are available. If you go to business taxes, legal, marketing, you'll find a lot of great resources that are here for you. So we have bookkeeping services. We have, if you want to get support in a business pitch, a different chamber of commerce for Josephine County. If you scroll down, nonprofit solutions can assist you in continuing to walk through this edupreneur journey without doing it on your own. And two of the accountants that Options for Education has already established a relationship with are April Thomas and Robert Reynolds. In this presentation, you'll be able to click on their names and it will take you to their sites. And we encourage you to reach out to them because it's my understanding that they have very fair rates and are passionate about helping educational entrepreneurs. And Options for Education has spoken to them specifically and would like to promote their services because they believe in what they stand for. And again, we've already clicked on the resource list for Options for Education. We've gone over yeslegal.org. And lastly, my firm, tcarterlawfirm.com, or Tiffany Carter, attorney at law, is the business name. You can click on my website if you would like additional information about the services that I provide for educational entrepreneurs. One of the programs that I think could be particularly helpful for you is called Fractional General Counsel Services. This is where I can give you a free quote as to how my law firm can support your business with some of the legal services you may need, such as document preparation. Maybe you need a tuition agreement, a waiver done. Maybe you're having issues with a particular parent that has inspired creating a policy to kind of protect your learning environment. Or maybe you have questions on how to ensure you have the proper insurance and documentation in place if you want to start doing field trips or providing activities outside that could potentially cause some accidents to happen and you want to protect your learning environment. I can give you a quote based on the services that you would need on a regular basis and make sure that it fits your actual legal needs and not charging you for something you don't need. So if you're just starting out, maybe you only need 2 hours from my law firm to look over paperwork or answer questions, and we can provide that support. And then if you actually need an attorney in your area to file anything, such as file a lawsuit because unfortunately someone is not paying according to your tuition agreement, I would assist you in finding the right attorney for your area to pursue in handling that. And as long as you're a member of the Edupreneur Support Program, you would get the reduced hourly fee for my firm at $150 an hour. And the monthly retainer would be based on that hourly rate. So please feel free to reach out, book a free consultation with me so I can provide you with how I can best support your learning environment and we can grow together. And some questions I would like to answer that often come up For the state of Oregon, people may wonder what's even the purpose of starting a private school since you have a lot of options outside of just creating a private school. And that could be because people want to target a particular audience or families or parents that are not yet comfortable with, I would say, a learning environment that looks different than a public school. Maybe they feel more comfortable with starting their child out in a private school that is more so catered to their needs. Also, people may want to create a private school because that will be the route to obtain accreditation. And that can be important also to the particular families that they serve because maybe they want to make the process easier for their students if they have to ever return to public school. Having an accredited school would assist them with that without the student being subject to testing to prove that they know the information in which is reflected on their transcript. It also eases the process sometimes in obtaining accreditation to apply for certain scholarships in colleges. But again, you do not have to create a private school in the state of Oregon, but that may be the route that people choose to go just because, again, it makes things more appealing to certain families that they want to target. Also, I often get questioned as to can a nonprofit have a for-profit arm of it? Or basically, if I want to create a nonprofit, can I participate in some for-profit activities underneath it? And the answer, or easiest answer to that question would be you can create a for-profit entity and a nonprofit entity that can work together legally. And we have an article on the Edupreneur Support Program's website related to that. But you will want to create two separate entities because you want to ensure if you are going to engage in anything that is for profit and is not in line with your nonprofit's mission and goals or charitable cause, then you need that to be, or you need those services to be provided under a for-profit entity. Because if you do that under your nonprofit, potentially you could lose if you have federal tax exemption status or even your nonprofit status with your state, and you don't want to do that. So it's best if you have ideas that are surrounding a for-profit entity and a nonprofit cause to just create two separate organizations and basically operate them at the same time. So any activity that you want to do, you have a place for them to operate underneath that. And I would highly, highly recommend that. And let me check one more place in terms of additional questions that we sometimes receive. So I do often receive a question, what is the difference between a private school or homeschool co-op? And the main thing is what we covered earlier. A private school is going to meet the compulsory attendance laws on behalf of parents, and they have to comply with those additional laws in the state of Oregon that are specific to a private school operating, as opposed to someone who has a homeschool co-op that's not regulated by the state. And if they're serving homeschool families, it's actually the parents' responsibilities or guardians of those children participating in the homeschool co-op to meet the homeschool laws, not the operator of the homeschool co-op. So there's more flexibility in what that business owner for the homeschool co-op can provide, and they do not have to comply with the same regulations that a private school would have to, as we've seen when we went to the Department of Education's website for Oregon. So I would say the main difference to keep in mind, if you're operating a private school, then you're responsible for meeting all of the private school laws under your state code. As opposed to a homeschool co-op, there's no specific laws outside of making sure you're meeting your county's building, fire codes, food handling codes, and zoning laws, but there's no laws within the compulsory attendance laws that require you to do anything as specific as with the private school. It's the parent's responsibility because they are homeschooling their child, then they must meet the laws that are related to the homeschool laws in your state. And it says, could a homeschool co-op, or a question that I receive sometimes is, could a homeschool co-op where parents teach different things potentially fall under child care enrichment exemption? So if you recall earlier in the presentation, we did go over how if you are doing a single enrichment activity, you may not need to obtain a child care license. And I would say the way in which you could take advantage of that law would be if your homeschool co-op is set up to tutor children. That could be a single enrichment activity, but the main thing that you need to be aware of in order to take advantage of that exemption, you have to make sure that you're operating less than 8 hours a week, or that each child that participates, that they do not exceed attending your homeschool co-op more than 8 hours a week. So that's the main limitation, is the amount of time that children can participate if you're providing tutoring services for the homeschool co-op. But if you're doing numerous activities and tutoring is not the main focus, it doesn't seem that that exemption would be applicable to you. And can you have a virtual private school in the state of Oregon? I did not see anything within the code that would limit that. However, I would encourage you to check with Oregon's Department of Education as to the requirements regarding having a student that is not in person and being able to account for that instructional time. The main part of the law that would be applicable to a virtual private school or one that has a standalone building is making sure that the children are meeting those instructional hour requirements based on the grade that they're in. And you want to ensure that you're doing so if you want to launch a virtual program, that you have accountability that the state would recognize, so that, again, the parents are meeting the compulsory attendance laws. And as we've already gone over, you have a wealth of resources concerning zoning support. If you are looking to create a facility within the city of Grant Pass, that again is within the Options for Education website, and the accountant's information for Oregon, as well as the Edupreneur Support Program. So again, I want to thank you for attending this webinar. And if you have any questions, again, within the resources that we have provided you, you can reach out. Thank you again for your time, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you in a live webinar one day soon. Take care.